There are some foods that just shouldn't be mixed together. And if you do mix them, it could cause some unwanted effects in your body. For example, eating too much protein with your carbs can actually slow down your digestion and make you feel very sluggish afterwards. And there are many other combinations that can cause all sorts of problems. In today's video, we are going to go over 6 foods that should not be mixed together, and what will happen if you eat them. The first 2 foods that should not be mixed is fruit with your meals. When you consume fruit with a meal, the high sugar content of the fruit can actually slow down the digestion of that meal, because sugar takes longer to digest than protein or fat. This means that your food will spend more time in your stomach, which can lead to bloating and a feeling of discomfort. For example, let's say you have a big bowl of oatmeal with lots of fruit on top for breakfast. The sugar in the fruit will slow down how quickly the oatmeal is digested, leading to a feeling of sluggishness and potentially even some digestive issues. But if you have the fruit either before or after your meal, you will notice that you will have much better digestion and you won't feel nearly as sluggish. The same concept applies to eating fruit with other high-carbohydrate foods like bread, pasta, or rice. For example, if you ate a banana with a sandwich, the sugar from the banana would slow down how quickly the carbohydrates from the sandwich are digested. This can lead to a feeling of being full and satisfied after the meal. But it can also lead to weight gain over time if you're consuming too many calories. It's important to note that this doesn't apply to all fruits equally. Fruits that are lower in sugar, like berries, are less likely to cause digestive issues when consumed with a meal. However, it's still best to consume fruit either before or after a meal rather than during it. So, if you want to enjoy fruit with your meal, it is best to choose lower sugar fruits like berries and to consume the fruit before or after the meal instead of during it. Number 2 is tomatoes and dairy. Tomatoes contain a compound called lycopene, which can react with dairy proteins, causing an enzyme deficiency in your gut. This can lead to poor digestion, bloating, and even diarrhea. Lycopene is a pigment that gives tomatoes their red color, and it's a very powerful antioxidant. However, it can cause problems when consumed with dairy products like milk, cheese, and yogurt. The reaction between lycopene and dairy proteins can create an enzyme deficiency in your gut, which can lead to poor digestion and other uncomfortable symptoms. That's why it's important to avoid mixing tomatoes and dairy together in your meals. For example, if you're making a salad with tomatoes and mozzarella, it's best to use a vinaigrette dressing rather than a creamy dressing made with dairy. You may also want to avoid tomato-based sauces with dairy-based ingredients like milk or cream. On the other hand, you can enjoy tomato-based sauces with olive oil or other non-dairy-based ingredients without worrying about any negative reactions. And if you love the taste of tomatoes and dairy together, like in a caprese salad, it's best to eat them at different times of the day, rather than mixing them in one meal. By avoiding mixing tomatoes and dairy together, you can prevent the potential digestive issues and enjoy the delicious flavors of both ingredients without any problems. The third food that should not be mixed is bananas and whole grains. Bananas are a great source of potassium, but consuming them with whole grains can actually reduce the amount of potassium absorbed by the body. Whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, and oats are also a good source of potassium, but they also contain phytates. Phytates are compounds that can bind to minerals like potassium and prevent them from being absorbed by the body. This means that eating bananas with whole grains can actually reduce the amount of potassium that your body absorbs from the bananas, potentially leading to a potassium deficiency. A potassium deficiency can cause muscle weakness, fatigue, and even irregular heartbeat. So it's important to avoid mixing these 2 foods together. However, you can easily prevent this by simply eating bananas and whole grains at different times of the day. For example, you could have a banana smoothie in the morning and then have brown rice with your dinner. By keeping these foods separate, you'll ensure that your body gets the full benefits of both without any interference. Just remember that this tip doesn't apply to cooked whole grains. Cooking whole grains can break down some of the phytic acid, allowing for better absorption of potassium from bananas. so you don't have to worry about mixing them in a meal together if they're cooked. Next is dairy and gluten. Dairy and gluten are two of the most common food-based allergens, and they are often found in processed foods together. When these two allergens are combined in processed foods, they can trigger an immune response in people who are sensitive to them. This can lead to digestive issues like bloating and diarrhea, as well as respiratory problems like coughing and wheezing. That's why it's important to avoid eating dairy and gluten together. If you're concerned about this, you can always read the ingredient list on packaged foods to check for the presence of both dairy and gluten. If a product contains both, it's best to avoid it if you're trying to reduce your exposure to these allergens. It's also worth noting that dairy and gluten are commonly found in processed foods like pizza, ice cream, and bread. These are typically not the best choices for those with food sensitivities anyway, so it's a good idea to limit or avoid them regardless. And if you're looking to reduce your intake of dairy and gluten, there are plenty of healthy alternatives available. For example, almond milk and coconut milk are great alternatives to dairy milk, while gluten-free bread and pasta are made with alternative flours like rice flour or coconut flour. Finally, meat and citrus fruits. Meat and citrus fruits should not be eaten together because the acidity of the citrus fruits can interfere with the digestion of the meat. Citrus fruits like oranges and lemons contain a lot of acid, which can slow down the digestion of protein and fat. This can lead to indigestion, bloating, and a feeling of discomfort after a meal that contains both meat and citrus fruits. That's because the acid in the citrus fruits can also cause heartburn in some people, especially if they're already prone to it. So it's best to avoid mixing these two types of foods together. However, there is an exception to this rule. Cooking meat with citrus fruits can actually help tenderize the meat and make it easier to digest. For example, a classic dish like carne and sujuko combines meat with citrus fruits and spices. The cooking process allows the meat to absorb some of the flavors of the citrus fruits without the digestive issues that can occur when they re-eaten raw together. So if you want to enjoy the combination of meat and citrus fruits, cooking them together is a good option. Just be mindful of the acidity of the citrus fruits and try not to eat them in large quantities in a single serving. Overall, it's important to listen to your body and pay attention to how you feel after eating certain foods. While the tips above can help guide you on what to avoid, everyone's body is different, and you may find that there are other foods that do unagree with you. If you experience any digestive issues or discomfort after eating certain foods, it's a good idea to keep a food journal to track your symptoms and see if there's a pattern. This can help you identify any potential triggers and make adjustments to your diet accordingly. Remember, while some foods may not be a good mix, there are plenty of other combinations that can provide a balanced and nutritious meal. So don't be afraid to experiment in the kitchen and try out new recipes to find what works best for you. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe for more helpful nutrition videos.